The rain fell in a steady, deliberate rhythm over the Hale estate, washing the iron gates and dark stone walls in a cold sheen. Inside, the house remained silent in the way only powerful places ever were, quiet not from peace, but from control. Every corridor was watched, every shadow accounted for. Men with weapons stood where art should have been, and art hung where warnings once were. At the center of it all sat Alessandro Hale. He did not raise his voice. He never needed to. In a world ruled by blood oaths and buried secrets, his name alone had ended conflicts that armies could not. Wars dissolved when he chose silence. Men who had sworn vengeance found new loyalties overnight. Alessandro ruled without spectacle, without cruelty for its own sake. Precision was his language. Restraint was his weapon. He stood by the tall windows of his private study, one hand resting lightly against the glass as he watched the rain blur the city beyond the estate. The skyline belonged to him in ways no map could show. Below, guards rotated shifts with mechanical efficiency. Above, the house breathed with him, quiet, alert, waiting. Behind him, barely audible, footsteps approached. Emma moved through the room like she always did, careful not to disturb the air. She carried a silver tray with a single cup of black coffee, placed precisely where he preferred it. She had learned the rhythms of the house quickly in the 6 months she had worked there, which doors never creaked, which floors demanded silence, which men spoke and which ones watched. Emma was not weak, she was invisible. That had been her survival since childhood. Speak softly, move quietly, be useful, not noticeable. In the Hale estate, invisibility was a form of protection. Guards barely registered her presence. Advisors spoke freely when she passed, assuming a maid was furniture, not memory. They were wrong. Emma noticed everything. The tension in a man's jaw when a name was spoken. The way Alessandro's shoulders tightened when certain calls came in. The subtle shifts that told her when violence had been narrowly avoided. She set the tray down and stepped back, hands folded neatly in front of her apron. "Leave it," Alessandro said without turning. "Yes, sir." She hesitated, just a fraction longer than usual, sensing something off. The air felt heavier, the silence stretched too tight. Then she turned to leave. "Emma." Her name stopped her mid-step. He rarely addressed her directly. She turned, eyes lowered. "Yes, sir." Alessandro faced her now. His expression was unreadable, dark eyes steady, calculating. In his hand was an envelope, thick, cream-colored, sealed with an insignia that belonged to old power. "It arrived this morning," he said. Emma did not ask what it was. She waited. "My former fiancé is getting married." Something tightened in her chest, though she did not know why. She had heard whispers among the staff. The name Alina Whitford carried weight even inside these walls. Political bloodlines. Crime alliances disguised as charity boards and public offices. "She is marrying into the Bellatori dynasty," Alessandro continued. "They are calling it a celebration. It is not." Emma lifted her eyes briefly. "It is a merger," she said quietly before she could stop herself. Alessandro studied her, not with surprise but with interest. "Yes," he said, "it is." He broke the seal and removed the invitation, glancing at it once before setting it aside as if it were meaningless paper instead of a calculated provocation. The Bellatori family had made sure it was public. Cameras would be present. Eyes would be watching. They wanted him there or wanted him absent. Either choice would speak. "I will attend," Alessandro said. Emma nodded. Of course he would. Not attending would look like weakness. Attending would invite scrutiny. Then he said the words that shifted the ground beneath her feet. "You will attend with me." For a moment, Emma thought she had misunderstood. "I'm sorry, sir." He met her gaze directly now. "You will accompany me to the wedding." Her breath caught, as staff. "No." The word was final. "You will attend as my companion." The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if the walls themselves were listening. Emma's mind raced through consequences she did not yet understand. A maid. At a wedding filled with politicians, crime heirs, women dressed in power and men who measured worth in bloodlines. "I don't understand," she said honestly. That is intentional, Alessandro replied. They expect me to arrive alone or with someone they recognize. Either would satisfy them. And me, Emma asked softly. You do not fit their expectations, he said. That makes you untouchable. She swallowed. They will ask questions. Yes. They will judge. Yes. She hesitated, fear creeping into her voice despite her effort to contain it. Why me? Alessandro was silent for a moment. Then he said, because you do not play their games, and because you know how to stand without performing. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. One rule, Emma, do not explain yourself, do not apologize. Her heart pounded. And if they humiliate me? His gaze hardened, not with anger but certainty. They will not. Emma nodded slowly, though she did not fully believe him. Still, she said the only thing she could. If that is what you require, sir, I will go. Alessandro turned back toward the window, the rain still falling, the city still watching. As Emma quietly left the room, one question lingered in the silence she carried with her. Why would a man who commanded fear, without lifting a finger, risk everything by bringing a maid into a room designed to destroy the unprotected? And why did it feel like the answer would change them both forever? The night after Alessandro spoke her name, Emma did not sleep. She lay on her narrow bed in the staff wing, staring at the ceiling, listening to the estate breathe. Guards changed shifts outside with quiet boots. Doors opened and closed in distant corridors. Somewhere far below, a generator hummed steady and low like a warning that never stopped. Emma had lived most of her life, learning how to disappear. In rooms filled with louder people, she learned to become smaller. In homes where anger arrived before food, she learned silence. By the time she came to work for Alessandro Hale, she already knew the rules of survival. Do not attract attention. Do not invite curiosity. Do not be remembered. That was why she had lasted, where others had not. The Hale estate was not a place for fragile people. Maids quit within weeks. Drivers vanished without explanation. Some never came back after a single night shift. Emma stayed. She stayed because she observed. Because she listened. Because she never asked why a hallway was suddenly closed, or why a man left through the back gate and never returned. She cleaned blood from marble without reacting. She heard gunshots in the distance and continued folding linen. Fear lived in the walls of the estate, and Emma learned how to walk beside it without flinching. That was what Alessandro noticed. He never watched her openly. But Emma felt it sometimes. That weight in the air when she entered a room. The sense of being measured not as staff, but as something else. The guards dismissed her. They joked in low voices, assuming she did not understand. But Emma understood everything. She understood that Alessandro Hale was not cruel. Cruelty was loud and careless. He was controlled. He chose when violence happened and when it did not. And that made him more dangerous than men who enjoyed blood. The night before the invitation arrived, Emma had seen him standing alone in the courtyard long after midnight. Rain soaking his suit. Face turned toward the dark sky. A man who carried power like a burden, not a crown. Now that man was asking her to step into a world designed to crush people like her. By morning, the estate felt different. Whispers followed her through corridors. Eyes lingered where they never had before. The staff knew something was coming. Mrs. Dalton, the head housekeeper, stopped Emma near the service stairs. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted Emma's apron. You should not have been chosen, she said quietly. Not because you are unworthy. Because that room will be dangerous. Emma nodded. I know. Danger was not new to her. What frightened her was something else. Being seen. By midday, word spread fully. The Bellatory Whitford wedding. Politicians. Crime families. People who smiled while destroying lives with signatures and phone calls. And Alessandro Hale would arrive with a maid. Some guards shook their heads. Others looked at Emma with pity. A few looked at her with something colder. That afternoon, Alessandro summoned her again. She stood in his study hands, folded heart steady, despite the weight pressing on her chest. "They will test you," he said. "They will try to humiliate you, to provoke me." Emma lifted her chin. "I will not give them what they want." His gaze sharpened. "Good." Then he said something that unsettled her more than the invitation itself. "Understand this, Emma. I am not bringing you to protect you." Her breath caught. "I am bringing you because they cannot use you against me. And because when they try you will show them something they forgot." She did not ask what that was. As she left the study, Emma realized something terrifying. This was not an accident. This was not cruelty. Alessandro Hale had chosen her because she had nothing to lose. And because sometimes the most powerful weapon in a room full of monsters was a woman who refused to be afraid. The wedding was still days away. But already the game had begun. Alessandro Hale did not remember the first time he learned power. He remembered the first time he learned restraint. It was the night he chose not to pull a trigger. The night a war ended without blood. Men who expected violence left the room shaken by silence. That was how his empire was built. Not on ray, not on spectacle, but on control. Inside his private study, Alessandro stood alone long after midnight. The city below glowed like a living thing, unaware of how easily it could be broken. Phones lay untouched on his desk. Messages from allies and enemies waited without response. The wedding invitation sat where he had left it. Not opened again. Not discarded. Eleanor Whitford had once stood where Emma now stood. At his side. Chosen not for love, but for leverage. Her family wanted power. His world needed cover. Their engagement had been a transaction dressed as romance. It ended the moment she tried to use his name against him. Now she was marrying into the Bellatori dynasty. A union meant to rewrite borders without firing a single shot. They wanted Alessandro to witness it. To feel replaced. Or exposed. They underestimated him. Alessandro did not attend events to perform. He attended to observe. To measure. To end things quietly. But this time he changed the rules. The guards would not understand. The advisors would argue. Enemies would laugh. Let them. He thought of Emma. Quiet. Still. Watching. She had entered his world without knowing it. Without ambition. Without hunger for status. That was why she mattered. In rooms filled with predators, Emma never tried to impress. She never flinched. She never asked for protection. She moved through danger the way water moves through stone. Patient. Unstoppable. That made her dangerous, in ways the Bellatori people would never see coming. Alessandro remembered the first week she arrived at the estate. A shipment went missing. Voices rose. Weapons came out. Emma continued setting the table. Her hands steady. Her eyes lowered. But when he looked at her, she met his gaze without fear. Not defiance. Not submission. Just presence. That was when he noticed her. The wedding was not about Eleanor. Not really. It was about exposing weakness. They expected Alessandro to arrive alone. Or to bring a woman polished and familiar. Someone they could dissect with smiles and whispers. They would not know what to do with Emma. She could not be threatened. She had no family they could reach. No reputation to destroy. No price they could offer. And when they tried to humiliate her, they would reveal themselves. That was the trap. Alessandro moved through the estate as dawn approached. Guards stepped aside instinctively. Doors opened before he reached them. Power followed him without demand. In the east wing he stopped. Emma was there folding linens. Unaware he was watching. She worked with precision. Care. As if every movement mattered. It did. He spoke her name. She turned. Calm. Alert. The room shifted. They will try to break you, he said. Not because you are weak. Because they are. Emma listened without interrupting. You do not owe them anything, he continued. Not answers. Not explanations. She nodded once. Do you trust me, she asked quietly. He did not hesitate. Yes. That single word sealed everything. As he walked away, Alessandro understood the risk. Bringing Emma would not start a war. It would end one. Because when monsters saw themselves reflected in dignity, they either bowed or exposed their own fear. The Bellatory Whitford wedding was approaching. And for the first time in years, Alessandro Hale looked forward to being underestimated. The day before the wedding arrived, wrapped in silence. Not the calm kind. The kind that presses against the skin and waits. The Hale estate moved slower than usual. Guards spoke less. Doors closed softer. Even the air felt watchful. Emma felt it the moment she woke. Something was shifting. Not outside. Inside. She dressed in her plain uniform and stood still for a moment. Hands steady. Breath controlled. She had faced danger before. But this was different. This danger wanted her to doubt herself. By mid-morning, Alessandro summoned her. Not to his study, but to the East Wing. A place rarely used. A place meant for preparation, not comfort. 2 armed guards stood outside the room. They nodded once and opened the door. Inside waited a woman Emma had never seen. Sharp eyes. Calm posture. Hands that moved with intention. She introduced herself softly. I was sent by Alessandro. No name. No explanation. Garment bags hung from a metal rack. Dark fabric. Heavy. Elegant. Emma understood then. This was not about beauty. This was armor. The woman did not smile. She studied Emma the way strategists study terrain. They will look for cracks, she said. Do not give them any. Emma nodded. Fabric slid over her skin. Cold at first. Then grounding. The dress was simple. Dark. Unapologetic. It did not beg for attention. It commanded stillness. When Emma looked at her reflection, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked powerful, but because she looked unafraid. That frightened her more than any insult. When Alessandro entered the room, the woman stepped back. Silent. Invisible. He looked at Emma for a long moment. Not assessing. Not judging. Recognizing. They will not expect this, he said. Emma swallowed. I do not know if I am ready. He stepped closer. Neither are they. That was not comfort. It was truth. Later that afternoon, Emma returned to her duties. But nothing felt the same. Whispers followed her. Some staff avoided her. Others stared openly. She overheard a guard say, He is sending her into wolves. Another replied, No. He is sending wolves a mirror. Emma felt the weight of that settle into her bones. As evening approached, Alessandro stopped her in the corridor. His voice low. Controlled. Tomorrow you will walk beside me. Not behind. Not ahead. She nodded. Do not rush. Do not shrink. Let them feel the silence when you enter. Emma hesitated. And if they push? A pause. Brief. Heavy. Then his answer. Let them. That night, Emma stood by her small window, watching the estate lights glow against the dark. She thought of her old life. Of rooms where survival meant staying quiet. Tomorrow's survival would mean standing still. She realized then. This was not about attending a wedding. This was about being seen and refusing to bend. Somewhere deep inside her, something hardened. Not fear. Not anger. Resolve. By the time she lay down to sleep, Emma understood. Alessandro Hale was not testing her. He was trusting her. And tomorrow, that trust would be placed in a room designed to destroy anyone who did not belong. Emma closed her eyes. She was ready. The morning of the wedding arrived colder than expected. A sharp wind cut through the estate as if the day itself had teeth. Emma stepped into the main hall just as the iron gates began to open. Black vehicles waited in a perfect line, engines quiet but ready. Men with earpieces scanned the horizon with practiced intensity. Alessandro Hale stood at the center of it all. Still, unmoving, as if the world would not dare start without him. When Emma approached, the room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. She wore the dark dress chosen for her. Not soft, not decorative. It carried weight. Guards who usually ignored her straightened. A few looked away. Others stared too long. Alessandro turned. For the first time since she had met him, his composure flickered. Not surprise. Recognition. "You are ready," he said. Emma nodded. Her heart pounded, but her hands did not shake. He offered his arm. She took it. No words followed. None were needed. The convoy moved through the city streets like a blade, sliding through water. People stopped without knowing why. Traffic shifted instinctively. Phones rose, then lowered again. Power has a presence. It announces itself before names are spoken. As they approached the Bellatory Whitford estate, the atmosphere changed. Police presence thickened. Private security lined the gates. Smiles appeared where suspicion lived. This was not a celebration. It was a display. The vehicles stopped. A door opened. Alessandro stepped out first. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped. Laughter froze mid-breath. Eyes turned with a mix of fear and calculation. Then Emma stepped out. The silence deepened. She felt it roll over her like cold water. Judgment. Confusion. Disbelief. Who is she? Why is she here? What does she mean? Emma did not lower her gaze. She did not smile. She stood exactly as she was. Alessandro offered his arm again. This time, the gesture was deliberate. Public. When she took it, the message spread faster than whispers. She belongs there. They walked forward together. Each step measured. Unrushed. Guests parted without being asked. Some nodded stiffly. Others pretended not to stare. At the far end of the lawn, Alina Whitford turned. Her expression was flawless at first. Then it cracked. Not because Alessandro had come, but because he had not come alone. Her gaze locked on Emma. Sharp. Assessing. Emma felt the weight of it and did not flinch. As Alessandro and Emma passed through the gathering, a woman leaned toward another. A man smirked behind his glass. Someone laughed softly. They were already testing her. Alessandro felt it too. His hand tightened slightly on Emma's arm. "Do not rush," he murmured. "Let them feel it." Emma understood. They moved deeper into the crowd. Silence followed them like a shadow. Every eye was asking the same question. Why would a mafia boss risk ridicule? Why bring a maid into a room built to humiliate? The answer was not yet spoken. But the tension had begun to stretch. Thin. Dangerous. And somewhere in the crowd, power shifted its weight. The reception began without music. Without laughter. Without warmth. Crystal glasses were raised. Smiles were placed carefully on faces that had learned how to hide teeth. Emma felt it immediately. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The crowd closed in slowly. Not openly. Not aggressively. Like hunters circling something they believed would panic. A woman in a pale gown approached first. Her smile was practiced. Her eyes were not. "How brave of you," she said softly. "Stepping into a room like this." Emma met her gaze. Said nothing. Another voice joined from behind. Braver than wise, perhaps. A few quiet laughs followed. Sharp. Measured. Emma felt heat rise in her chest. Not fear. Not shame. Anger. But she remembered the rule. Do not explain. Do not apologize. So she stood still. A man with a polished watch leaned closer. "Tell us," he said. "Where did Alessandro find you?" The question was not curiosity. It was a blade. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. She turned her gaze toward Alessandro. He moved instantly. Not fast. Not loud. But when he stepped forward, the space around them cleared. "Her background," he said calmly, "is irrelevant." The man blinked. Smiles faded. Someone else tried again, testing from a different angle. "You must find this overwhelming. A room full of people who decide the fate of cities." Emma felt Alessandro's hand settle at her back. Steady. Unyielding. "If any of you believe," he said, "that diminishing her elevates you, you misunderstand how power works." The silence that followed was heavy. Not shocked. Afraid. But Alina was watching. She approached with grace sharpened into cruelty. Glass raised. Voice smooth. "It takes confidence," she said, "to stand where you do not belong." Emma felt every eye turn toward her. Waiting. Waiting for her to break. Instead, she lifted her chin. "Every world begins as unfamiliar," she said. "Some people simply forget where they started." The room shifted. This time, the silence was different. Uncomfortable. Exposed. Alina's smile tightened. Guests looked away. No one laughed. Alessandro did not speak. He did not need to. Emma had done something dangerous. She had spoken truth without accusation. Dignity without submission. And the crowd understood. They could not touch her. Because she was no longer standing alone. She was standing above the game. The first humiliation had failed. And everyone in the room felt it. The room did not recover. It adjusted. After the first confrontation, the guests changed strategy. No more laughter. No open insults. Only distance. Emma felt it immediately. The way conversations stopped when she approached. The way eyes followed, then slid away. They were no longer trying to break her. They were trying to understand her. That frightened them more. Music finally filled the hall. Soft strings meant to smooth tension. It failed. Alina stood at the head table watching. Her smile fixed. Her control slipping. She raised her glass again. Not for celebration. For dominance. Tonight, she said, is about legacy. About families that endure. About knowing where one belongs. Every word was aimed like a dart. Emma felt Alessandro shift beside her. Not to interrupt. To wait. Guests leaned in. This was the moment they wanted. The maid exposed. The hierarchy restored. Alina continued. Some people mistake proximity for importance. But standing near power does not grant it. A ripple moved through the room. Not laughter. Expectation. Emma felt her heartbeat slow. Not from fear. From clarity. She stepped forward. Not hurried. Not hesitant. Her voice carried without force. Power does not come from where you stand. It comes from what you refuse to surrender. The room froze. Emma looked around. At faces carved by wealth. At eyes sharpened by control. "I was invited," she said. "Not because I belong to your world. But because I do not." A murmur spread. Low. Uneasy. "You rule by inheritance. By fear. By agreements signed in rooms like this." She turned toward Alina. But tonight is about beginnings. And beginnings do not ask permission. Silence crashed down. Not one person interrupted. Emma continued. I do not need to explain myself. Because I am not asking to stay. I am choosing to stand. Alessandro did not move. Did not speak. His stillness was endorsement. Alina's face tightened. This was not the outcome she planned. She had wanted humiliation. Instead, she was witnessing displacement. Guests shifted. Some nodded. Others stared at the floor. For the first time that night, Emma saw doubt. Not in herself. In them. She stepped back beside Alessandro. Her hands steady. Her breathing even. Nothing else was said. Nothing needed to be. The maid had spoken. And the room would never forget it. The celebration fractured without anyone announcing it. Laughter returned in pieces. Voices softened, then broke again. Nothing flowed naturally anymore. Emma felt the shift before she saw it. Power does not like being questioned. It becomes restless. Alessandro leaned toward her. Walk with me, he said. They moved away from the center of the hall. Through tall doors that opened onto a private terrace. Cold air rushed in sharp and cleansing. The noise of the reception dulled behind them. Music became distant. Like something remembered, not present. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Snow began to fall. Slow. Deliberate. You should not have done that, Alessandro said finally. Emma's heart tightened. I am sorry, she began. He turned sharply. I did not say it was a mistake. She looked up. You changed the balance in that room, he continued. They expected obedience. They received truth. That has consequences. Emma nodded. I understand. Before she could step back, Alina appeared in the door. Her smile gone. Her voice stripped of performance. Alessandro, she said. We need to speak. He did not move. Anything you say can be said here. Alina's eyes flicked to Emma. This concerns us. Alessandro's voice hardened. There is no us. The word landed heavy. Alina exhaled sharply. You humiliated me. You attempted to humiliate her, he replied. And failed. Her expression cracked, then hardened again. You always did this, she said. You always chose disruption over order. Order is what weak people call control, Alessandro said. Alina laughed bitterly. You brought a maid to destroy me. No, he replied. I brought her because she cannot be destroyed by you. Emma felt Alina gaze on her. Sharp. Searching. Do you know who he is? Alina asked Emma suddenly. Do you know what he has done? Emma answered without hesitation. Yes. And you stand beside him anyway. Emma met her eyes. I stand beside him because he does not lie to himself. The words hit harder than any insult. Alina stepped back. This was not how the story was meant to go. She turned to Alessandro. You were supposed to watch me win. Alessandro's voice was calm. I came to watch myself leave. For a moment, Alina looked like a woman, not a symbol. A woman who had lost control. Then the mask returned. Enjoy your evening, she said. It will not end quietly. She disappeared back into the light. Silence settled again. Emma looked at Alessandro. Did I make this worse? He shook his head slowly. You made it honest. That is always more dangerous. They stood under the falling snow. The world quieter now. Sharper. Inside the reception, the game continued. But something had broken. Alessandro offered his arm. Not as instruction. As choice. Emma took it. Whatever came next. It would not be played on their terms anymore. The truth did not arrive loudly. It arrived like a door, closing somewhere deep inside the night. Emma felt it before anyone spoke. That tightening in the air. That sudden awareness that the game had changed again. Inside the reception hall, conversations resumed. But they were no longer careless. Names were spoken carefully. Eyes measured distance. Power recalculated. Alessandro stood still watching. Not the crowd. One man. A bellatory advisor near the back of the room. A man with gray hair and hands that never stopped moving. A man who had been staring at Emma since the moment she spoke. He began walking toward them. Emma felt it immediately. This was not another insult. This was something else. The man stopped a few steps away. Looked at Alessandro. Then at Emma. "You look like your mother," he said quietly. The room around them seemed to vanish. Emma breath caught. "My mother is dead," she said. The man nodded slowly. "Yes." Alessandro stiffened. His eyes sharpened. "You knew her," the man continued. "She worked in a hospital outside Naples years ago. During a war no one admits happened." Emma felt the floor tilt. She had heard stories. Whispers. A man brought in half alive. Guards bribed to look away. A woman who refused to ask questions. "You were there," Alessandro said. The man nodded again. "She hid you. Treated you. Saved your life." Emma's heart pounded. She had never known. Her mother never spoke of it. She said only that some people are worth protecting, even when it costs everything. The man exhaled. The Bellatory family tried to kill him then. Failed. They never forgot. Silence wrapped around them. Alessandro looked at Emma. For the first time, his control cracked. "Just enough." "I did not know it was her daughter," he said. The man smiled thinly. "She never took credit. She never asked for safety. She disappeared." Emma's hands trembled. "My mother lost her job. We fled. She never explained why." "Now you know," the man said. Then he stepped back, vanishing into the crowd. Emma felt the weight of understanding crash into her. She was not random. She was not invisible. She had always been part of this story. Alessandro spoke softly. "I brought you because you could not be used against me. But fate brought you because you were never beneath this world." Emma looked at him, eyes steady despite the storm inside her. "My mother saved you." "Yes," he said. "And tonight you saved me again." The room watched. But they did not understand. They only felt it. The maid was not a symbol. She was a legacy. And the crowd finally realized. They had never been looking down on her. They had been standing beneath her all along. The night did not end with applause. It ended with silence. Not the fragile silence of politeness, but the heavy silence that follows truth. Guests began to leave in clusters. Not celebrating. Not laughing. They moved carefully, as if the ground beneath them had shifted and they were afraid to test it. Emma stood beside Alessandro near the exit. No longer watched with contempt. No longer questioned. Now she was observed with caution. Elena passed them once more. Her face composed. Her eyes hollow. She did not speak. She did not need to. Everything she wanted the night to prove had failed. Outside, the cold wrapped around them again. Snow falling thicker now, softening the sharp edges of the estate. Cars lined up. Engines waiting. Men opening doors. Alessandro paused before stepping into the vehicle. He looked at Emma. "This is where most stories end," he said quietly. Emma felt the weight of the night settle inside her. "I know." But he did not move. Instead, he continued. "I have spent my life commanding fear. People obeyed. They bowed. They disappeared." He looked back toward the glowing hall. "Tonight, they did not bow to me. They bowed to what you reminded them of." Emma shook her head. "I only spoke honestly." "That is rarer than power," he replied. She felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had carried since childhood. The driver cleared his throat. "Waiting." Alessandro did not hurry. When we return, he said, things will change. Emma met his gaze. For me. For both of us. She understood then. This was not a reward. Not protection. Not obligation. It was an invitation. She stepped closer. I will not pretend to be something I am not. He nodded. I would never ask you to. The door closed behind them. The convoy pulled away. As the estate disappeared behind falling snow, Emma looked out the window, thinking of her mother, of silence chosen to protect, of dignity paid for with loss. She had inherited that strength without knowing. Alessandro spoke again, almost to himself. My world will test you again. Harder than tonight. Emma did not look away from the dark road ahead. Then I will stand again. The car moved forward, lights cutting through the night. Behind them, alliances weakened. Pride fractured. Games lost their meaning. Ahead of them, something new waited. Unwritten. Uncontrolled. For the first time in years, Alessandro Hale did not feel alone. And for the first time in her life, Emma did not feel invisible. The maid did not leave the wedding as a guest. She left as the woman who changed the balance of power. Without raising her voice. Without asking permission. And the world would never see either of them the same way again.